Hi, everyone. Big welcome. Good morning to those of you in China. Good evening to those of you who are in the same time zone as me. I'm James Heimowitz. I'm the president of China Institute, and it's just a delight to be able to welcome everybody to the Next Generation Leaders Circle, U.S. China Philanthropy Dialogue. Tonight's event is about the role of the next generation in U.S.-China climate collaboration. And, on so many fronts, it's such an important endeavor. Whether we think about it, at the big macro level, where we have China and the United States, arguably the two most important countries to the planet's future for the next chunk of time. Whether we think about it as from a climate perspective, which is probably one of the most important things that's impacting us already, if not, and then for the next chunk of time as well. So I really do want to congratulate the winners of the NGLC's Giving Circle on behalf of China Institute, because the work that you guys are doing and the philanthropic spirit that's behind it is just so important. And you're going to be hearing from them later this evening. Today is actually co-presented by the Serica Initiative and with the support of the Serica Initiative and SupChina. Big thank you to Josephine Lau, who's been working so hard along with Dinda Elliott on this, and Aaron and all the others. I'm so sorry that Josephine, isn't able to be with us in person tonight. She's not well, but tonight's event couldn't be possible without her and the tremendous effort of all of the NGLC members. And before I go on any further, I just want to say a big thank you to them, to all the members, and particularly to the speakers tonight. Now it's my great honor and privilege to introduce Anla Chung. Anla is there you go, welcome Anla. Anla is, of course, the founder and CEO of SupChina and also heads the Serica Initiative. She's a good friend to all of us and an amazing role model. Anla, of course, wears many hats. One of them is the vice chair of China Institute, where I have learned so much from Anla's philosophy and her approach to the way she does business and the way she leads her life. And, running a successful business is the first piece of it. But the next piece of it says, what can you do now that you've achieved success? That may not be so completely fulfilling, but she always manages to bring it to the next step and thinking about, how can I do good as well as do well? How can I help the next generation to think about these important problems that are going to be with us for the next chunk of time? And, it's all good and well to do really well in business, but it's important and a higher calling to be able to think about how we can contribute back. So I've learned so much over the past 7 years of working with Anla at China Institute. I know everybody that touches her, whether it's at SupChina or the Serica Initiative or any of the other things she gets involved with, bound to feel the same way. So it's truly an honor and a pleasure to turn over the platform to Anla to be the co-host for this evening. And thank you so much for underwriting and all your spiritual support as well, Anla.
Thank you so much, James. That was a kind introduction. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Oh, very well. Great. So it's really my deepest pleasure and honor to have these few moments to present the opening remarks. And thank you very much for your very hard work, James, and the wonderful work that Dinda has put together this this NGLC effort. I remember the first one that happened a few years back, COVID. And then also thank you to Josephine Lau, our Serica Initiative Executive Director, who could not be here tonight. Both Dinda and Josephine had collaborated quite religiously and passionately to put this together. So I'm very pleased to be able to speak today. And first, I'd like to say that Serica is the 501c3 nonprofit organization powered by SupChina, our sister for-profit media and business intelligence platform company. Here at Serica, we convene a community of global changemakers, such as the NGLC members, who are making a positive impact in the U.S.-China space to inspire each other along our organization's mission. And that is to promote education and dialogue between the U.S., China, and the rest of the world, and to advance positive social impact between U.S. and China, We do this through dialogue, storytelling, and philanthropy. This effort that China Institute and Serica have embarked upon is very close to my heart, because I believe that at my stage of my life, it is really the next generation that is going to lead our planet. And we want to be able to help and support our next generation of leaders to as much as we can, so that the world can be a better place. So we want to enable and empower them, and it is our duty, I think, to be able to support NGLC. So one of Serica's many exciting initiatives include Doing Well and Doing Good, which examines how we can do better and well professionally and personally while doing good at the same time to make a positive difference in the world, as our inspiring NGLC members are doing. Serica's Doing Well and Doing Good initiative also examines the nexus of business and social impact between the U.S. and China. This series has featured, among many others, firstly, David and Susan Rockefeller on their family's philanthropy related to China and the environment, Peng Zhao, CEO of Citadel Securities and board member of the Asian American Foundation, called TAF, and on the rise of Asian American philanthropy in the US, and also conversations with the Nature Conservancy, Paulson Institute, and Johnson & Johnson on how the US and China can work together on issues of climate and health. By the way, I am also vice chair of TNC, the Nature Conservancy, the largest conservation nonprofit. So I'm very proud that we can be part of this dialogue today. In addition to that, we are also partnering at Serica with PBS and WNET on an AAPI initiative. It's a 5-part series called Belonging, Asian Americans Now, which explores the roots of recent anti-Asian hate in America, how Asian Americans have responded, and where the community goes from here. Asian Americans have long been viewed as the perpetual foreigner, as never being American enough. This has only amplified in recent years. And this series, we hope to profile, we are profiling Asian Americans across the country and telling their stories of exclusion and belonging in America, as well as the hope they find in the new generation, cross-racial solidarity, and in each other's vision on community. I think that it's important for us to highlight competent and dedicated philanthropists as role models. And one of the things that we also try to do is to be able to feature these philanthropists so that our NGLC can seek examples and role models in their own philanthropic giving. I'm delighted that we can be honoring and awarding the nominee that has been part of this NGLC Giving Circle, and very excited to be here tonight. So thank you for having me, and have a wonderful evening. Now it's my turn to introduce you to Dinda Elliott, a great friend and past head of programs at China Institute and currently at the Harvard's Fairbank Center. We had hoped that when she left China Institute, she would come to SubChina, but no such luck. I think Dinda is very happy in Boston with her husband, and I'm so thrilled that we can work on this together. Dinda, thank you so much for all your great work.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Anla. And I have to say, I'm so thrilled to be here tonight. I guess I'm sort of the godmother of the China Institute Serica Next Gen Leaders Circle, since I helped found it a few years ago. And I just wanted to, it's a project that's very, very dear to my heart as well. And I just wanted to say how proud I am of this incredible group of American and Chinese change makers who are building human bridges that will keep the dialogue going despite increasingly tense Sino-US relations. And they're working together to promote positive change. So, you know, this evening is all about celebrating change makers, and I'm delighted to be here. And we are so very excited to have this evening's wonderful speakers, who are 2 women who have dedicated their lives to making positive change in the world. A couple of quick introductions. So Charlotte Kaiser oversees NatureVest, which is the Nature Conservancy's conservation investing division, whose mission is to create and transact investable deals that deliver conservation results and financial returns for investors. And we're going to learn a little bit about how she makes that happen. Peggy Liu is the founder of the joint U.S. China Collaboration for Clean Energy, and arguably one of the leading catalysts of a green China. From her base in Shanghai, she consults companies and governments on sustainability and how to catalyze societal change. Peggy is dialing in from California today. And Charlotte, where are you this evening? Where are you?
I'm in Missoula, Montana, where it's
Okay.
still been snowing, so hence my wintry garb.
Wow, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. And, we have very little time, so I'm going to jump right in. And Charlotte, let's start with you to get a broad understanding of the whole concept of impact investing. Can you give us a quick intro, a few sentences on what impact investing is and what the Nature Conservancy is doing in the impact investing area?
Sure, Dinda. Thank you so much. And thank you to the China Institute and to this amazing Leaders Circle for having me. And Anla, thank you for your support and leadership at the Nature Conservancy. It's fun to cross paths in this way. So the impact investing as a concept has been around for about a decade or so. And there's now a huge ecosystem of institutional support for catalyzing impact investing globally. It's defined by one such institution, the Global Impact Investing Network, as investments that are made with the intention to generate positive, measurable social and environmental impact alongside a financial return. So you have to do it on purpose. It can't be an accident. And that's really what we're trying to do at the Nature Conservancy, is to intentionally structure conservation outcomes into investment vehicles. So as an example, we work with asset owners such as BTG Pactual, their timberland investment group, to help set a new strategy for forest investing that includes carbon sequestration and biodiversity conservation. Or we work with governments such as that of Belize to help them develop debt offerings that support funding marine conservation in partnership with the U.S. government and private institutions. So it's really about bringing together an ecosystem of players, investors, governments, insurers, development institutions, to help blend the delivery of what is effectively a public good, conservation, with a private return.
So tell us a little bit, okay, so when it comes to this kind of impact investing, you're working, it sounds like, a lot with development institutions and governments, right? So it has a lot to do with public-private partnerships.
There's definitely a need for everyone to be at the table. In some cases, we're able to work directly with just private investment managers and create investments that generate not only a financial return, but also conservation benefit. Often, however, we require blended capital, so low-cost money from development institutions or foundations alongside more commercial rates of return in order to be competitive with investors and create those public benefits for conservation and the environment.
And are you arguing that the returns will and should be as high as any other commercial investment, or is the idea that, the investors are coming in saying, look, I know I might have lower returns, but I am doing this because I have a vision for making change?
There's investors participating all along that spectrum, Dinda. So some of them are interested in outcompeting, and they believe that impact creates what's called alpha in the marketplace. I think that's very challenging, and particularly if you're trying to do anything at scale. There are other investors, development institutions, development banks, and others who are most focused on impact and really are willing to take additional risk or be undercompensated relative to the marketplace because of the impact. But the vast majority of the capital markets are looking for risk-adjusted competitive returns. And at NatureVest, we're trying to transform that whole market and really demonstrate that you can achieve competitive returns and meaningful impact in the same vehicle.
Wow. Okay, so we'll come back to you in a minute. So I want to hear about how you've done that. You can share some examples with us, hopefully. But so Peggy, before we get into your 7 mega projects that you're going to tell us about that you've been working on, involving, dramatic change making, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you've worked through kind of public-private partnerships in China. You do a lot of work with the government in China. I'm really interested to hear, does that involve, working with the government and with the private sector? How does that work? And, and share your thoughts a little bit about how, I think the perspective in America is still continues to be largely that China is part of the problem as opposed to part of the solution, and to climate issues. And so share your thoughts on, how the government is, whether the government is committed to really dealing with climate change.
Well, I think my answer will address all three of those questions in one. Just as background, I started joint U.S. China collaboration on clean energy in April 2007 out of this event, which I produced called the MIT Forum on the Future of Energy in China. And unbeknownst to me, when I came up with this idea, it was actually the first public dialogues between U.S. and Chinese government officials on clean energy. And if you're familiar with the timeline of China going green, 2007 actually is the year that you start to see an acceleration of investment in the production and the actual deployment of clean energy solutions. And so this event was really interesting because there was public events. There was 400 people there. I invited people from all walks of life, including fossil fuels, BP executives, to press, Dinda, people like Dinda, to the co-founder of LEED, Green Building System, et cetera. So all walks of life. McKinsey was there as well, played an instrumental role. So at this event, during the private dialogue, they told me that there were 60 MOUs, memorandums of understanding between the two countries, and nothing to show for it that was tangible, nothing. And they said the problem has been not the intent to collaborate, but it falls apart in programmatic collaboration. And that is why this program is so important, because cultural bridges are the key to making any type of progress in any one of the countries. If you can't even speak the same language, if you aren't using the same vocabulary, if you can't create a safe space to dialogue, nothing will go forward. And so after this event, which, that was my intent, I was done, right? I did my MIT duty as a good alumni, but they were like, you can't just stop here. We really need programmatic help with an NGO that's set up that isn't handicapped by being part of the government, but just supports the government. So the next day I left my job as a VC, and McKinsey helped lead these roundtables that we did with the people that attended, plus some more experts that came in. Again, this is like U.S. DOE to NDRC and all sorts of companies. And what we did was we asked them, where can we make the biggest difference? So McKinsey and I actually put together a roadmap for a 10-year project. So JUCCCE is really supposed to be a 10-year project, that would change the trajectory of climate emissions in China. And we actually did just that, I believe. So if you look at the timelines in 2007, the first thing that the US government asked me to do was look at bringing in a new technology called smart grid into China. So this is an example of a PPP project. So what I did was I wrangled up the top smart grid private companies. At the time, there were almost all in the US. So Duke Energy, the CEO, CTO, et cetera, they joined, and then they helped really wrangle the VPs that were in charge of smart grid at Cisco and IBM and et cetera. And then we had Lawrence Livermore National Lab, US DOE, and again, McKinsey, et cetera. So we had the private people there. Then what we did was we created a white paper of what the future looked like if we were to implement this thing called smart grid. And then I brought it along with this person who worked at U.S. President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology for Bush to China. And we literally just had this meeting with a high-level official from a foreign country and a white paper to open the discussion. And what we were faced with were people who looked at my little image of what smart grid looked like with a little image of an EV, electric vehicle. And they said, this looks like sci-fi. Maybe you should come back in 10 years. This is 2007, right? But, I'm going to sort of shorten this. Like, we made a Clinton global commitment. You can say that's sort of NGO level. So you have private, you have government, you have the utilities, the grid companies, right? Everybody's working together. We did 3 major forums in different cities, Shanghai, Beijing, and Yangzhou, which is Jiang Zemin's hometown. Short story, or make it shorter, is the state grid, China state grid, in 2.5 years committed to put $7.2 billion behind implementing smart grid across their grid by 2020. And for those of you who are following, there's over 500 smart cities today, and China is by far the leader in smart grid technology and implementation. So each one of the 7 major shifts that JUCCCE helped catalyze in China followed very similar patterns of PPP and showing the dream. What does the future look like? Getting people excited about it, magnetizing the first few really big influencers, getting them to magnetize other people. And then it just sort of flowed, it happened. We didn't have a plan to get to, let's say China Dream. The slogan was actually started at JUCCCE. I didn't have a plan to say, I want Xi Jinping to use this as a national slogan. No, it's more a subconscious, energetic, magnetic tornado that we're building towards a dream and helping everybody see how they can empower themselves to be part of co-creating this dream. So that is sort of PPP in my world. Does that help, Dinda? Is that good enough? Oh, I think you're on mute. Are you on mute, or I can't hear you?
Yeah, thank you. You're right. It sure does help. And boy, talk about, inspiration, and also a reminder that a conference, there are so many conferences that happen in the world and then kind of nothing happens afterwards. But to go from a conference and then actually, keep carrying the ball forward and turn it into real action is incredible. And you have done so much with that. So Charlotte, again, I wanted to ask, drill down a little bit deeper into what kinds of impact you've actually seen through your impact investing projects. And in the answering that, maybe you can help us understand how you put an investment value on nature. How has that worked for you? Share some project that you're really excited about.
Absolutely. Maybe I'll start with the US based one, and then we can pivot to a global one. I think one of the projects we're most proud of is a forest investment vehicle that we structured in the Appalachia region of North America, which, for listeners who are not familiar, is a former coal mining and still currently active to a certain extent, pretty impoverished part of the southeastern United States. The Nature Conservancy stood up a fund, the Cumberland Forest Project, where we're the general partner and the managing member. And we raised $130 million of capital from outside investors, including about 27 LPs, limited partner investors, who put equity into the fund. And then we also raised some debt from a foundation, Doris Duke, and the state of Virginia. So a good example of public and private money coming together to acquire about 250,000 acres or 100,000 hectares of working forest hardwoods, mixed hardwoods in Appalachia. This is a critically important part of the migratory pathway for many, many species, which will become increasingly important in a climate changing world. It's basically a superhighway for biodiversity. And it's critical that these ecosystems be managed in a way that supports that conduit for migratory species, birds and others. It's also a really important protection of the water supply for the whole region. These mountains have a lot of streams and rivers that drain into major watersheds. So we manage the forest for these attributes. We protect that we don't cut trees along the sides of the rivers. We manage for connectivity, for habitat, and we also manage for carbon sequestration. So we're projected to sequester about 10 million tons of carbon over the life of the investment. And we do that by slowing down the rotation, letting the trees grow longer, and not cutting as many down. And obviously that means there's less in the way of timber revenues, but there's instead revenues from the sale of carbon offset credits, both voluntary and regulatory. So that's a good example of how you can monetize to a certain extent the value that's provided by natural capital. We've also permanently protected a large portion of the land. We've done the largest land protection deal in each of the 3 states where we own property, Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee, through this single entity for water protection. And the state will pay in the same way that they will pay for a water filtration plant, they will pay for standing forest so that it can exist in perpetuity to provide clean water for the people. So we did that with the state of Virginia. So that's a good example of we're offering market rate returns to our equity investors, bringing public dollars in to pay for the public good of clean water, and then monetizing natural capital through the sale of carbon credits.
Right. Wow. So tell us about your global project, the aquaculture project.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I talked about this earlier. And this, this is the place where we were trying hard to expand our footprint into Asia. And the reason for that is that 90% of aquaculture by production volume is in the Asia Pacific region. And it has the potential to provide a sustainable protein source to the growing population of the world. But as currently practiced, most aquaculture is incredibly damaging to natural systems and to oceans. So we're working with a partner on an investment strategy that basically demonstrates and delivers sustainable aquaculture and biodiversity positive aquaculture. So we target reducing pollution from conventional aquaculture through new technologies, supporting mangrove health by avoiding projects that remove mangroves and instead investing in seaweed and bivalve aquaculture, and providing economic benefits through new jobs and livelihoods to low-income communities. So we're not only investing in platform businesses for seaweed and shrimp, including land-based shrimp, we're also looking at farms onshore and farming technologies that support high value species such as grouper. And then, as I mentioned, technologies that reduce pollution, provide for increased efficiency of production, and other impacts. Looking right now at Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, and India as main areas of focus there. So in that case, we're partnered with a fund manager who is the fiduciary, and then we are the conservation kind of strategy implementer.
Wow, fascinating. Before we move on from that and dive deeply into China with Peggy, I wanted to ask you, does that involve, presumably you're having to persuade farmers to deploy technologies that may cost money and stuff like that. I'm just curious as to what are some of the challenges that you confront?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We're basically, our strategy is to invest in the tech companies, which are then marketing their products to the farmers. And yeah, and what we are offering is, access to this investment capital for farmers who change their behavior, right? So it's a little bit of a carrot and a stick, and that's how we design a lot of our vehicles.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, well, and that project is really just being developed, is that right?
Just being developed.
Yeah.
Yep. We received. Yep. We're working on talking to investors about it now. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we'll be looking forward to following that as it develops. Thanks for sharing that. So Peggy, let's jump into China. Talk about the possibility that you see in China. As I said before, a lot of people in the U.S. think that China's part of the problem, not part of the solution in terms of sustainability and climate. And so, I want to hear, while it's true, we know that China is the largest emitter of carbon ahead of the United States, but that's just part of the picture. And I want to hear what you're seeing on the ground in China in terms of the possibility of making change.
Well, in my experience, again, just to give context, I was really actively on the ground working on programs from 2006. Then we founded JUCCCE to COVID, so 2020. And during that time, again, just to give you context, the industrial West took a couple hundred years to first pollute and then still trying to figure out how to unpollute. But China really started developing in 1990, the first supermarket, right? It started to urbanize. And now it's taken about 2007, I don't know, the last 15 years or so to make huge jumps, huge transformations in trying to shift the system so that going forward, we can have regenerative systems, we can have net zero emissions, et cetera. So I think one is the mindset from the top down is there, like they are committed. It is, top 3 priorities at the top level. I think that's missing in a lot of other countries. So one is commitment. 2 is that they have a secret weapon, which very few people in China actually know about, much less outside of China. And that is, it's one of the only countries that I know of other than Singapore that has mandated government training each year. So 12 days minimum, but if you're promoted, you might have a month, 3 months. You might go to Harvard Kennedy School for a year. So one of the programs that I was asked to create in 2007, again, right after the foundation of JUCCCE, the Vice Minister of Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development asked me to create the first ever eco-city classes to teach mayors across China. So again, you might say like, whoa, that's really incredible, but you have to remember there were no classes like that. And so he started something called, he was in charge of the NAMC, the National Academy for Mayors of China. This is in Beijing. It was the first of the 8 schools that carry out this mandated curriculum. And now the Party School and the China Academy of Governance have merged, so there's 7. But so what happened was, since 2008, we took a year to develop the curriculum, to sign all the partnerships. We, over the years, based on where China was at its stage of development, we started to teach like clean energy for cities, low carbon transport, the first ever municipal waste and water treatment class, et cetera, eco-livable cities, even the China Dream at the end. And as we developed a good reputation for bringing in, again, PPP, we brought in like GE, we brought in Philips Lighting, we brought in, again, DOE, we brought in Covanto, we brought in a lot of these, the Bloomberg worked with us. We brought those experts in, the head of sustainability for Seoul, Korea, the deputy mayor of London to talk about the climate action plan for London. All of those people came to China initially, and then we started to do videos more virtually. And then we were invited to 2 other schools. So over time, we taught 1,000 mayors and central government officials how to build cities, eco-cities. So you can imagine what they explained to me was the reason why China is able to change so quickly, but harmoniously, non-chaotically, is because of this channel. This doesn't exist anywhere that I know of outside of Singapore. And so we should take advantage of these systems that China has to very smoothly deploy to the masses, like China scale, gigascale, gigapace, new policies, new technologies. So I would just start with that one story.
That's a pretty amazing story. Yeah. So Charlotte, I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts about capital deployment in China, and whether, what could be possible.
Yeah, I'm so inspired listening to you, Peggy. And I think what you call out is exactly the opportunity in investment as well, right? There's this ability to really move huge amounts of money by rewriting rules. And we've started to have dialogue with financial institutions in China to really encourage. One of the biggest ways to get large scale capital to change how it behaves is to rewrite the rules around risk and risk assessment and risk disclosure. And you see that with the task force for climate related financial disclosures and now nature related financial disclosures. And when banks start to think about how they value the risk they face because of water, or the risk they face because of fire, or the risk they face because of floods and storms, all of which are regimes that are changing rapidly, suddenly they behave differently around the investments that they make and the impact that they're realizing that they have. And so I think there's a huge opportunity with Chinese financial institutions to change those rules of the road and really start to see a much more impact way of thinking around deploying capital.
It's so fascinating. And Peggy, as you've been saying, I mean, there is something about China where they're able to make big changes, as you're suggesting, Charlotte, to kind of change the rules of the game. Just think about what they're doing with green finance, for example, where they're the leading issuers of green bonds, et cetera. And they are starting to change the rules. I know our time is almost up, but Peggy, I wanted to ask you to share, you've got all these incredible projects you've been working on. Is there one more that you want to share with us that shows us the kind of game-changing that can happen in the climate area, something you've worked on?
Well, I mean, gee, I've worked on a lot in China. It's on my bio. Happy to share that in a lot of talks on my website. Yeah. What I would like to share with you, especially since Charlotte's here, maybe we can work together on this. Now, what I do is I travel all over the world to teach people how China made these changes, starting with dreaming up the future. And I call this tornado leadership. It's how do you make societal scale shifts at warp speed versus incremental speed, or even exponential speed for some technologies. And the world is calling for that type of change. And it is possible. If you look at the work that I've done, it's possible. But you have to stop planning and you have to start sensing. And so one of the, I now teach outside of China. So one of the groups that I work with is the nation of Hawaii. It's the sovereign indigenous nation of Hawaii. It's got 45 acres that was transferred to them after Bill Clinton signed an apology law. And this was in 2001 that they took over 45 acres in Oahu. They're building an entire nation. And the nation foundation is really around aloha spirit, about shared stewardship, about taking care of each other. And they have this ancient Hawaiian ecosystem called ahupua'a. Ahupua'a is basically a system of watching the water go from the mountains to the seas. And as a citizen, you don't have private ownership of anything. You don't worry about how much you're taking at any time. All you do is worry about how much you're giving water to the person downstream. And so we're developing an entire nation based on this philosophy, based on this ancient, sophisticated ecosystem, but with new technologies. And so for example, I think I learned, is it 75% or 90%, some very large percentage of queen bees in the mainland US come from Hawaii. But, now we need to move from industrially farmed queen bees to regeneratively farmed bees. And so that's an example of what they're trying to create. That might be interesting to somebody like Charlotte. But the message that I want to give to the people here that Dinda is the fairy godmother to is that you, starting with your dreams, can make large scale change. And so my second book is on how to do this in 3 stages, 12 steps, tornado leadership. And I'd love to offer it as gift to Dinda's fairy godchildren, a deeper workshop on how to apply it to the projects they're working on.
Terrific. And you know what, when I was listening to you talk about from the mountains to the streams, et cetera, later in this evening's conversations, we're going to be hearing about stuff like that from some of our winners, because they're working on looking into traditional, farming methods that are sustainable, et cetera. And it's very much picking up on the spirit that you talked about. So Charlotte and Peggy, thank you so much for joining us. I know this was so brief, we could talk for hours, but thank you. We're going to definitely get you back. This group needs your energy and inspiration, and, wow, talk about game changers. Thank you so much. So it is my honor now to introduce our next speaker, who is Rena Peng. And Rena Peng is an advisor at Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. She works with individuals and families to define and implement their philanthropic goals, providing mission and value guidance and an issue area research and expertise and grant making best practices. So let me, without any further ado, hand it, Rena, please join me. And I'm going to disappear and I'm going to hand the mic over to you. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. It is a real pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to be speaking with you all today. First and foremost, I want to commend you all for being part of this group that is learning together, taking action, and aspiring to be real change agents of the world through collaboration and co-learning. I was born in Dubai and grew up between China and the US, and as such, I saw varying levels of poverty, wealth, opportunity, and growth. And like each of you, I thought seriously about how I can make a difference in this world and how I can best create positive social impact. In my role at Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, I work with donors all over the world to articulate what is important to them, what they want to accomplish, and how to craft a giving strategy and program that resonates with them, but that is also effective, thoughtful, smart, and impactful. A lot of donors think that they need to jump right into it and start giving money away. But what I do in my job is to help them take a step back and examine ways of giving that is sustainable, most impactful to them and to the world. So a few ways that I help do that is by asking some key questions. And today I'll outline a few of these questions. So the first question I ask is, why are you giving? Are you motivated by heritage, values, legacy, experience? I'll give you an example. Let's take family as a motivation. Honoring and appreciating ancestors can be among the strongest of motivators. Our upbringing imprints upon us values and experiences, which we often seek to reinforce through our giving. For instance, I work with a donor whose father was the first in his family to attend college. And now the second generation is funding scholarship programs at universities for first generation students. This giving strategy represents an authentic way to honor their father, uphold the values of their family, and make a big difference in the lives of those first generation students. Whereas those donors that are motivated by legacy seek to influence the future. So donors may want to be remembered for more than their financial success. Their philanthropy is their public commitment to making a better world. And other legacy donors want to create a family culture of generosity and public service. They seek to pass down values as well as resources to the next generation, and having their family involved in philanthropy is deeply meaningful to them. To answer this first question thoughtfully, why are you giving, requires some inward reflection to dig deep, because motivations change, but unless a giving strategy addresses the needs that drive these motivations, it's unlikely to be sustained or successful. Identifying motivations also makes it easy to include them in strategies as well as your assessments. The second question I ask is, what do you want to achieve? This is really a three-step process that starts with framing the issue you're interested in. Different lenses on the world help us focus and sort what we see. For instance, is it a big challenge? Examples of this might include poverty, disease, education, climate change. Most donors will drill down from the big challenge to further define their focus. For instance, funding education could mean focusing on early childhood learning, or it could mean post-secondary education. And within post-secondary, is it about helping low-income students gain admissions to selective colleges? Or is it about making sure they graduate with a degree once they are in? Or is it both? Some donors will concentrate on the types of communities whom they wish to support. So women, children, the elderly, youth, refugee, animals, the possibilities are many. There are also donors that want to focus on a specific place. This could be a city, a village, a neighborhood, or donors could focus on specific institutions, an alma mater, a museum, and more. So after you narrow your focus, you'll want to define the outcomes you wish to achieve. Thoughtful philanthropy means not only having a clear focus on the challenge you want to tackle, but also having a clear vision of what change you want to see. Whether you call it a goal, an outcome, or a solution, it's important to define the desired end result. For instance, There are many worthy nonprofits that address literacy issues. Some run tutoring programs, others partner with school systems or social services, and there are others trying to figure out the best techniques to teach adults. It's important to consider how an organization tries to solve a problem, not just which problem it tries to solve. So the last question I'll outline here is, how do you think change will happen? Philanthropy allows the exploration of human potential. Of course, that includes the potential of the donor, not just in the capacity to give, but in the ability to think through how the philanthropy might achieve its stated goals. For instance, if your goal is to protect a critical watershed area, you could, for instance, fund one, research to study, to understand and define the impacts, or you could fund awareness. This could be awareness campaigns to raise public awareness. Or three, you could fund public policy efforts to shape legal and regulatory framework protecting the watershed. Or there are also other approaches that include innovative projects utilizing new technologies. In almost all cases, the path is not clear. You're faced with competing theories that are all compelling, and perhaps none of them proven. I'm often confronted with the question of how hard is it to give money away from people who are not in this world? As you can see from the choices at hand, the analysis required and the level of personal experience, skills, and perspectives that contribute to a thoughtful and effective strategy, it is indeed a challenging and complex endeavor. So these three questions: why are you giving? What do you want to achieve? And how do you think change will happen? They're just part of the beginning of the process we take with each donor. Work with donors to figure out each of these aspects, deep dive into issue areas, connect them with issue area experts and major players in the field, and conduct due diligence for potential grantees. This looks like looking at their financials, the leadership team, programming, and assessing their impact. There's really no set template we use. It's highly curated based on the donor. So next, I want to talk about trends in next-gen giving. I've seen firsthand how family, legacy, and heritage are clearly important and effective motivations. But new generations are really setting out to break into new areas of giving with a fresh set of philanthropic principles. First one I want to talk about is a trend that's emerging, is what is referred to as trust-based philanthropy. This is the belief that people struggling against inequities deserve center stage in stories about change they are creating. This is about acknowledging that people working to build power from within communities are the agents of change, and that they know best about their environment and community. So this type of practice generally tries to equalize the power dynamics between a funder and a grantee, to create trust, and to lessen the burden of reporting to a donor. So a practical implication might mean that instead of a 5-page report, a grantee will just have a phone conversation with the donor to report on their progress and any updates. So this relates to another trend I want to bring up, which is that there are more and more funders leaning towards investing in small grassroots organizations. The next generation really seems to be ready to take a big bet and want to help scale the impact of small players that have a robust theory of change, which means that next-gen donors are really focused on metrics and data and prioritize research-informed methods and processes. So this last topic that's trending, that I'll be talking today about that's trending, is a debate between spending down assets within one's lifetime or endowing your assets to exist in perpetuity. So historically, most foundations are set up to exist in perpetuity, serving the mission the founder intended well beyond their lifetime. But more and more funders, especially younger funders, want to make a big impact during their lifetime, or say on some timely issues in the next 5 years. So in this case, they might choose to spend down quickly instead. The differences in time horizons seem to reflect a heightened sense of urgency in this next generation. And these are just a few key questions being debated in philanthropy and among donors. Well, this concludes my remarks, but please feel free to reach out to me with any questions you may have. I'm always happy to chat about philanthropy.
You're muted, Yvonne.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much, Rena. I am Yvonne Liu. I am a founding member of NGLC and also the chair of our Giving Circle committee. I'm here today to give you the behind the scenes scoop on the NGLC Giving Circle. And then I have the honor of introducing our next panel, which features the two winners of our Giving Circle grant. The story of the NGLC Giving Circle began in early 2020 when we pooled our funds with the help of China Institute and sent an urgently needed donation to Wuhan. Soon after that, everyone's lives turned upside down, and NGLC members located across the US and China started meeting over Zoom with much greater frequency. We learned about strategic philanthropy from guest speakers, and we exchanged ideas about how to make a positive impact together. But learning and talking amongst ourselves was not enough. We had to put our ideas into practice to take action, and that's where the Giving Circle came in. We envisioned an annual Giving Circle that would be member-led from start to finish. We would find innovative projects that, one, tackle systemic issues through strategic philanthropy, two, substantially benefit from a relatively small donation of 10,000 US dollars, and three, improve US China relations. We voted on issues to focus on, and we determined the theme for this inaugural member-led Giving Circle: climate change. We ended up receiving 28 applications from organizations across the US and China. And after a rigorous process of evaluating, interviewing, voting, and having heated debates to break a tie, I can now finally announce, on behalf of all of us in NGLC, the beneficiaries of this year's NGLC Giving Circle grant. The runner-up, which will receive $9,000, is Chengdu Urban Rivers Association, also known as KURA, or Chengdu Chengshi Heliu Yanjiuhui. And we were able to offer this additional runner-up grant thanks to additional generosity from NGLC members and also philanthropist Wayne Silby. Wayne Silby is a great friend of the Serica Initiative, and he is co-founder of Calvert Investments, a $15 billion investment manager that was an early pioneer in socially responsible investment. And back to introducing KURA. KURA's mission is to promote the natural, recreational, and cultural values of rivers, particularly the upper reaches of the Yangtze River, Changjiang. They provide a unified voice on issues such as river conservation, development of environmental awareness, and promotion of sustainable development in urban and rural areas. NGLC's grant would fund KURA's Local Wisdom to Tackle Climate Change project, which entails investigating the low carbon agricultural practices of 3 Western Sichuan villages, and then disseminating this traditional wisdom to influence climate change policy. Congratulations, and let's welcome KURA's Chief Executive Secretary, Sun Ji. He will turn on his camera later. And next, I'll introduce the winner of our grant, which will receive $10,000, is China Outdoors Collective. China Outdoors Collective's mission is to showcase the beauty of China's wilderness, to inspire protection of China's environment and reverse negative Western stereotypes about the country, its nature, and its people. They empower Chinese photographers to be a direct bridge between China's conservation NGOs and Western philanthropy and support. NGLC's grant would fund the development and launch of the organization's website, which would showcase photography through an interactive map and build support for grassroots conservation NGOs in China. Congratulations, and let's welcome China Outdoors Collective co-founder, Kyle Oberman.
Thank you so much. Hello.
Congratulations to the two winners. I will now pass the mic to Annie Liangzhou, who is one of my dearest friends whom I met through NGLC and the moderator of a conversation between Kyle and Sunji. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Good evening and good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us for this event. I'm honored to be here to moderate this last panel of the Philanthropy Dialogue. My name is Annie, and I'm a founding member of NGLC. I currently manage my family office focused on impact investing, education, and heritage preservation, and have been engaged in U.S. China cross-border business and philanthropy for the past 10 years. So earlier we heard from NatureVest, from JUCCCE and Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors on the changing landscape of philanthropy and how they're addressing environmental and social issues through active philanthropy and different forms of impact investing. Similarly, the NGLC Giving Circle, which is a signature event for us, aims to make an impact through exploring the nexus between social innovation and strategic philanthropy. Given this year's theme of climate and environment, we thought that China Outdoors Collective and Chengdu Urban Rivers Association really embodied the values of our organization and are really driving positive impact through tangible, sustainable metrics, comprehensive planning, as well as a dedicated team of experts. So it's an honor for me to host Kyle and G on this panel and lead this conversation to learn more about their meaningful work. And at the end of the conversation, I would also encourage the audience to ask questions in the Q&A box for the speakers. So welcome again, Kyle and G. So for our first question, I would like to invite you both to provide a brief introduction of your respective organizations and the projects that will be funded by NGLC's grant. What was the motivation behind these projects, and how do they uniquely and strategically tackle climate change? Kyle, maybe we can have you go first.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Annie. And thank you everyone again. This is just so exciting. And really, I think this is the birth for us for something really big and that we hope can be a really powerful, meaningful impactor of change. And so the China Outdoors Collective really came about from me working in China for the last 7 years as a freelance conservation photographer with a lot of local Chinese conservation NGOs, and running up against this kind of storytelling barrier where we don't have a critical mass of storytellers talking about these issues and talking about these amazing groups. And for whatever reason, whether it be language or internet, also a lot of these Chinese stories aren't getting out into the broader world. So a lot of the Chinese scientists or Chinese NGOs are missing a lot of the support through whether it's philanthropy or research collaboration that could go into the country if there were more storytelling through these channels of photography or video, like you see in other countries around the world collaborating. And also, I think a lot of us have our phones here on Zoom, so I would invite you can Google right now, China environment and the US environment. And there's a dramatically different shift. And if you look at right now, the images, what is associated with that? China's environment, you'll get this immediate just gray, swipe through. In the US, you see the national parks and everything else. So I think as long as we don't understand that almost 50%, 42% actually of China's landmass is wilderness, as long as we're missing that complete part of the picture, then we're missing a massive opportunity to protect it. So the China Outdoors Collective is a platform that brings Chinese landscape conservation photographers together, allows them to have a platform that can be seen on the West and to give them the power and the tool to use their photography to tell Chinese stories, and thereby inspire the West to really see this holistic picture of China, not just Eastern China, urban China, but wild China as well. And then hopefully then link wild China and resources in the West with all the conservation groups like Cura and all the other domestic conservation groups in China with potential support. And again, this could be philanthropy, this could be student researchers, this could be university collaborations, all sorts of collaboration between the East and West. So, and this is mainly hosted off of this website, which we will be building. So again, we are super excited, and that was the introduction. I think you had other questions, Annie, but I got too excited in talking about that. I think you talked about the connection with climate change. Is that right?
Yeah, I was asking how does China Outdoors Collective address kind of climate
Absolutely.
change and right.
Yeah, well, again, so wilderness areas around the world are the biggest carbon sink we have. They capture 50% of all our human emissions, right? So, and if you compare that to carbon capture technology, which is big in the news, that is 0.003 of our emissions. So yes, these technologies are important. Yes, clean energy is important. I mean, it's critical, but protecting what we already have, getting to these 30% of oceans and 30% land protected by 2030 is critical to stabilizing the planet and reaching net zero goals. And also, I think Charlotte mentioned on this too when she was talking about the Nature Conservancy's work, but animals are going to need more and more space to migrate and adapt to a changing climate. They're going to need more range and elevation, and they're going to need to go farther to find food and to find breeding grounds and to find places that matched what they thought was their habitat. So when we think about wilderness, it is a key part of ensuring that we do capture carbon and that we allow species and humans living in these places the adequate habitat and space to maintain their lifestyles. The climate and biodiversity crisis are very connected, and this is one way to address that.
Thank you, Kyle. Those are very compelling points. Now we'll hear from Sunji. So Sunji, I know you'll be speaking in Chinese, so I will do some of the translation. I hope I can do a good job.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad and thanks for your supporting, but my English is not very friendly, so I need Annie's help to translate my answers. So thank you, Annie. And let's change into the speaking Chinese model now. So 谢谢 NGLC， 谢谢画面协进社对我们这次项目申请的一个支持。然后我也是非常的兴奋，能够就是跟在座的各位进行一定的一些交流，然后也希望得到大家对我们项目的更多的帮助和支持。我们这次项目的初衷是这样的，因为应对气候变化，实际上它是一个全球性的议题，但是现有的一些就是解决气候变化的方案，更大程度上是从国家与国家之间、政府与政府之间这样的一些顶层设计，或者是从一些技术层面去做一些关于企业或者工业社会这样的一些就是减碳的一些模型啊，数据的模型。但是呢，从回到我们传统的社会本身去寻求一些新的路径或解决的一些思路，这样的方式还比较少见。So Annie, do you need to translate this? And I can continue.
Sure. So Ji was just saying thank you to China Institute, Serica, and the NGLC for supporting our project. He's very glad to be here to share with everyone their progress. He had said that climate change is a global issue, but we often, they see it as a country-to-country problem where governments, civil society, and citizens have to work together to tackle the issue. And this is, Kira is working on a model where they're taking lessons from, citizens and villages. So this is kind of a rare and unique opportunity to address climate change.
对，我们恰好在就是我们的社区工作当中，在那个特别是在农村社区的工作当中，我们发现其实中国的这种传统的社会，它蕴含着很多对资源的可持续的利用方式。这些利用方式可能贯穿于他们的一些人居、他们的生产、他们的生活等等当中。所以我们希望也是通过这样的一些就是可持续方式、可持续利用资源的这样的一些方式的挖掘出它背后蕴含的一些现代的一些低碳和减排的一些理念。这些典型的低碳和生态理念，不仅是作为 Kira 所在的这样的一个中国西部这样的一个传统社会，实际上它可以推及到就是中国广阔的现在的这样的一些就是农村地区。但是现在中国的农村地区面临一个很严峻的问题，就是在这种就是急速的这种工业化发展过程当中，它的这样的一个就是不断的城镇化和不断的这样的一个单一的这样的一种发展模式，它可能跟传统是割裂的。 这种割裂的话会造成我们现在的对于这个气候变化一个就是实际上是一个负面的影响，比如说城镇的集中化、土地的集中化，然后大家生活方式行为的一个就是怎么样的一个所谓的消费主义的一个传播。所以我们希望的是更多的从传统社会本身的一个优秀的一个就是生产生活理念当中去挖掘出它的一些就是可持续资源利用方式的一些成功的经验和值得传承的一些更多的关于环境友好，关于它的一些就是怎么样呢？关于低碳的生活和低碳的消费这样的一些就是成功的一些经验或值得传承的一些各方面的元素，然后把它真正的提炼总结出来，作为我们从就是怎么样，从村民参与或者是从底层这样公众参与的角度，去呈现的这样的一种就是对气候变化的一种问题的一种响应，大概是这样的一个就是初衷，然后因为这个项目是 QR 从2019年开始去尝试的，试图探讨我们去以本土传统的方式去以系统的去应对气候变化整体项目的其中一个就是持续的一个推进。然后从2019年开始，我们在挖掘川西平原这样的传统农耕智慧，从传统农耕智慧当中，我们去提炼出一些关于现有的可持续的资源的利用方式，从可持续资源利用方式，我们跟现在的气候变化这样的大的议题相对接，我们就发现它中间可能会产生一种就是很好的一种连接，这种连接可能不只是说我们从技术性层面去解决气候变化问题，而且还可以去推动公众的一些参与和本地居民的关于这种宏观议题跟我们微观生活之间的这样的一个就是建立他们自己的这样的一个就是生活自信和文化自信这样很多的层面综合起来，所以这次就非常荣幸的能够得到 NGLC 这样的一些就是支持，让我们继续能够推进到这样的工作当中。
Okay, that was a lot, but I will try to. No, that's good. I will try to translate all of that. So Ji was just saying that when they're working in these villages, they discovered that traditional methods of living can be leveraged where the villagers have actually adopted very simple and sustainable lifestyles that can be replicated through different areas in the Chengdu River Basin Valley. So these Chinese villages have faced numerous challenges given the rifts in the way that Chinese cities have developed, and also the disparity in economic development in the rural areas. So Cura hopes to explore more of these, the historical wisdom from these villages, and to put together kind of these methods, and to take a bottom-up approach in terms of climate change. So this project was launched in 2019, and they want to systematically address climate change through these existing ways, and to use and reuse existing resources, and to also leverage a lot of these methods from the villagers, whether it's materials or sustainable farming methods, and also the way they protect their rivers. So they're also hoping to encourage more participation from the local residents, as well as gain support from institutions. Okay, so for my next question, how can emerging organizations play an outsized role in contributing to U.S. China climate collaboration? Do you see your model being replicated in other regions and on a grander scale? Kyle, we can go back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. I think emerging organizations, they fill unfilled gaps, right? I think like we emerge to address and solve problems that we have not seen solutions for. And we may be very small, but I think that it's very exciting when we can draw more people into a group, right? If you think about this bubble being people who care about conservation or care about climate, And there's a certain amount of people on the edge who don't, and maybe they have other values. Maybe their value is, maybe their highest priority is in another industry or another hobby. But if we can connect, for example, in the China Outdoors Collective, a love for the outdoors, and give that an action step saying, okay, you like this photo, you like this place, you like the fact that there are these incredible landscapes. Well, here's the action step. Now we're going to give it to you. And that action step is to learn more about it. Is to, oh, here's the NGO working in that area. Here's Churo. Here's, Shanshui. Here's TNC. Here's what they're doing. So I think that what we're trying to do is bridge that gap and draw in the audience and empower them to take action in a place which maybe before they didn't really feel like they belonged, or they didn't really know how to take action. So I think, these small groups, we step up to fill these bubbles. And is it scalable on a global scale? I definitely think so. I think what we need more. Let me be clear that I'm a co-founder, right? There are 2 other Chinese partners with me who aren't here today, but they're also co-founders. And I think, and the majority of our content will be from Chinese photographers. So I think anytime you're developing platforms that empower locals to share their traditional ecological knowledge, or be the voices for their country, that is scalable, and that is definitely what we need more of across the world when we think about building bridges. So we're trying to do that for China in the US and China in the West, but I think that across the world, I think targeting specific groups, in our case, people who love the outdoors, and empowering locals to use their voices to get more support. That is absolutely what we need more of.
Thanks, Kyle. I think there's no dearth of kind of outdoor photography photographers out there, right? Who really love kind of the Chinese outdoors and would be interested in being part of your platform to showcase more of the beauty and the kind of climate issues or ecosystems that of China, where it can serve as a good bridge between the U.S. and China. So now we'll go to Sunji. So my question earlier was about how can your organization play a role in the U.S. China climate collaboration, and how do you see your model being replicated?
我觉得是这样的，因为中国和美国作为整个世界上最主要的2个这个碳排放的大国，其实他们承担着人类应对气候变化的一个重大的一个共同的责任。但这种责任呢，需要一个社会层面的广泛参与，特别是中国这样的一个急速工业化的这个碳排放大国，其实它在减碳的过程当中，它也面临着很多的发展或者人口经济的压力。然后在这样的一个就是互相之间的矛盾和压力之下所以我们民间组织，特别是 QR 这样的一个环境保护为宗旨的这样一个民间组织，它进入的话，它可以以更多的客观和独立的视角，然后为决策者，为这样的碳排放决策者带来最基层的这样的一个实践的经验的一个总结，并且能够推动公众的一个参与。这样公众的参与更大层面上能够逐渐的增强2个国家之间的一个互信和互相之间的经验。然后我们针对这样的一个传统智慧怎么样去应对气候变化这样一个就是全球性的议题，把这样的议题更深度的挖掘出来以后，这样的宝贵的一些理念和模式，我们传递给更多的这样的气候变化政策的制定者和这样的一个实践者。可以有助于去建立一套与现代科学技术相辅相成的这样的一个环境问题的解决之道，更有助于不管是中国还是美国，我们去探索更适合于本土的一种综合了自然和社会传统这样的一个就是未来的可持续发展思路。同时我们的相关的成果可以反馈给我们社区的居民，去增强他们对于自身这样的一个低碳生活也好，或者可持续生活也好这样的一个自信。实际上就是 QR 现在做的一些事情是正在逐渐的在影响到我们的决策者，包括今年刚好中国有个特色的这种2会就是人民代表大会和政协会，跟 QR 我们前期做的这样的一些传统农耕智慧这样的发掘，已经作为政协的提案，已经影响到我们政协的提案，作为一个就是倡导我们的决策者去 正视和重视我们川崎平原这样传统生产生活当中的一些碳汇和低碳的这样的一个生态价值。现在今年应该是成为了我们的一个政府的一个政协会议的提案这样。
So G has just shared with us that the U.S. and China are the two largest emitters of carbon, and he believes that they should take on a greater share of the responsibility of addressing climate change. And as China is addressing these challenges, it is facing a lot more because of population, because of the kind of top-down approach. And he believes that an organization like Cura can really address this from a grassroots perspective through encouraging participation from the masses, as well as putting together more dialogue between the two countries through successful case studies, data, and effective methods that are catered towards local situations, and to also help protect local villages and their cultural customs. He also mentioned that China recently had the two meetings between the major government institutions. And they are able to bring their methods and case studies to the top government decision makers to emphasize the value of ecological protection. So next, I wanted to ask a question that's related to our grant. So beyond the financial support of our grant, how do you hope NGLC can help you with your organization achieve your goals? You know, could it be through our members' expertise, networks, or other ways? We'd really hope to be helpful to you in not only providing this grant, but providing our networks to you.
Do you want me to go first, Amy?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the things that we are most excited for. I think, you know, this again, we were founded by 3 freelance photographers coming together in like this rare moment of collaboration where we're usually working alone. And I do think that when we launch this platform, definitely in China, but also think definitely in the US, we're going to get a lot of interest and support and people asking us, you know, wow, this is amazing. How can we help? These are positive stories that we wanted to tell too. Like, we want to get on board. And I think that, you know, benefiting from the mentorship of experience of how to formalize an organization that can operate between both countries, it can be very helpful, you know, whether that's an NGO in the US or China, and how does that look like so that when support is ready to pour in, we are ready to take it and we can handle it. And we won't be overwhelmed by our kind of freelance lens that we take on the wheel for so long. And I think also in the US, I've worked in China for most of my career, but I'm now in New York City. And one of the things I'm very excited about is to tap into the incredibly, you know, active and energetic community of people who care about China in the US and elsewhere, whether it be Europe or you know, other places across the world. Because I think that is an audience that doesn't get a lot of these stories. People in Shanghai don't get these stories, but people in New York definitely don't either. And so I think that, you know, tapping into Chinese Americans who still care about, you know, China, or Americans who have been to China and still want to, you know, keep in touch and want to, you know, connect back to these places. That is definitely, I think, a network that, you know, I'm hopeful that some of the people with the NGLC are connected to, or with the China Institute, and we can kind of leverage those roots to really build like a coalition of people who are behind this mission and who want to get our mission and our platform out to as many people as possible, because that's how we're going to drive change and really support these NGOs back in China.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Kyle. 孙吉，那我们刚才我问的是，就是您希望就是 NGLC 可以用什么样的其他的方式来支持到Cura 的这个目标？
实际上 NGLC 我们希望是如果能够通过 NGLC 这样的平台，能够就是协助介绍到更多的这样的一些科学家和相应的这些做相同或相近议题的这样的一些环保组织和科研机构，能够我们共同就是能够组织一些相应的问题的一些更多的交流和学习。 我觉得这样是能够特别有助于 Cura 以后对这个议题的更多的深入或者一个就是视野的一个展开，这是一方面。另一方面就是如果 NGLC 有这样的一些就是相应的渠道，或者是能够把我们更多的一些研究报告和调研的报告或者是工作能够通过很多的一些层面能够让更多人看到和听到能够让就是不管是决策者还是其他地区的一些就是NGO 或者是相应的专家学者或是本地的居民能够看到听到，我觉得这样是对于我们工作更大的一个就是推进，或者是一个更大的一个就是提升吧，这样的一个帮助。对，
She has just shared that he hopes that NGLC's platform can help them introduce them to more experts, scientists, and climate organizations, where they hope to encourage more learning, dialogue, as well as knowledge sharing between Cura and these organizations so they can have more institutional support. They also hope to share more of their work through their case studies and successful models, which can be replicated to a broader network through us. 好，谢谢孙吉。And then finally, I wanted to ask a question about next-gen philanthropy, which is something that we've been talking about throughout the evening, which is what lessons can we draw through next-gen philanthropy and the impact it can have, particularly to your respective organizations where it's more grassroots, smaller, where we can be more impactful. Kyle, please share with us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think kind of just going off the last question, I think that there's a growing recognition among young people that the philanthropy is not just limited to money. I think that philanthropy, it can be measured by money, it can also be measured by time, or it can be measured by, donating talent or resources. And that's kind of what we just talked about. The $10,000, that's great, and that really helps the grassroots project gets its leg up, but that's not, going to change anyone's life or pay for anyone's, annual salary. But like when we have invested philanthropists also donating their time to help and counsel and mentor people, that is a massive unquantifiable impact. And then also, talent and resources, right? When these mentors and philanthropists have specialities and they have networks and they have things that they do really, really well, bringing those together is also a form of philanthropy. And I think that those kind of that marriage of all these different types of giving is really exciting. I think that is definitely, I think, what the kind of this young people and young generation of philanthropy is looking to do and where the wave is going. So it's really exciting.
孙吉。
对，其实我了解到这个华美协进社，还包括我们的中美循环，因为你特别华美协进社，它是个历史非常悠久的组织，包括之前在早期成立的时候，有中国很多的这样的一个历史名人在其中起到很大的推动作用。所以我们觉得，所以我首先对华美协进社的很多的工作表示相当的一个敬意和尊敬。因为它在长期持续的以理性的方式和客观的方式，以务实的方式推进到中美两国之间的交流，而中美的这样的一个就是年轻人之间的交流非常的重要，因为说实话现在中美关系其实处于一种非常微妙的一个就是境地啊，然后大家可能在自己的一个信息的一个同温层里面，或者信息的一个茧房里面，很难走出去打破这样的一些自己认知或交流的这样的一种屏障。我们觉得这样就是咱们 NGLC 的那个就是新一代的这样的一个委员会 New Generation 非常的就是怎么说呢，非常的一个有意义的之处，很多就是持续的推进我们年轻的一代不断的去增强自己互相的交流。因为你说实话我们虽然说现在很多的政治经济方面的一些纠葛，但是呢人类社会还是需要很多共同的一些问题，需要大家协作去进行一定的解决，而年轻人在其中呢，他是比较一个就是敏锐，比较一个活跃，而且也比较善于运用网络等工作方式进行互相之间的交流和协作这样的一个群体。所以我们觉得这样的一个就是平台，这样的一个就是方式能够更有利于不管是中美两国之间还是更广阔的年轻人之间，他们能够就是建立一个互相之间理解和互相之间 更好的建立一个长期友好关系这样的一个就是方向。所以说这样的跨文化交流更好的能够就是解决大家之间共同面临的问题吧。因为整个我们觉得那个就是年轻人还有一点就是因为现在就是Next Generation 这样的一个就是组织，它善于把年轻人的这样一个行动力和一些热点的议题结合起来，包括这个就是资助去年就针对这个就是 QV 的就是这个就是新冠肺炎进行，今年可能针对我们气候变化，这些都是非常热点的一些问题。然后年轻人能够推动年轻人针对这些热点问题提出自己的一些就是相应的回应和解决方案，我觉得这个是非常就是有意义的。对，大概是这样，不知道是不是太多了。
不会，谢谢。So G has shared with us that first of all, an institution like China Institute is very well known and has had a history of encouraging U.S. China relations. So he wanted to express his respect for the work of China Institute, as well as similar institutions in encouraging this dialogue, and especially between young professionals. So this is extremely critical because we are seeing these new perspectives from the next generation, and they can share their concerns and use more active and innovative ways, such as social media, to tackle global challenges. And NGLC seems to be at the forefront of the most of addressing the most imminent challenges. And last year, when we were talking about climate change and environment, we believe that an organization like this can really help to lead a lot of these discussions between the two countries. And he hopes to see more dialogue, more increased understanding and friendship between the two countries as we need to work together to address future challenges. 好，谢谢孙吉。
谢谢 ，Thank you.
So that's all the questions I had, but I'd love to encourage the audience to ask more questions. Or if Kyle and G, if you have other things that you would like to share.
我现在说孙姐，我觉得你们做的事情是非常的棒。我觉得我们之后可以线下聊，加个微信，然后看看我们平台能这么支持你们，我觉得是非常非常优秀。Yeah, no, I think what Swinji was talking about is just I think again, local conservation groups with so much power. And supporting groups like Chengdu Rivers Association, and thank goodness we know about them now because of this grant and because all of you. And I think there's just so much energy in China going on right now that is worth supporting and discovering.
So Kyle, we have a question from the audience. Jocelyn has asked, what will your website look like? The interactive portion. We'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, no, great question. So it's based off a map feature, and I think you introduced that, or you introduced that. So at the homepage is a map and of China, kind of a satellite map style, and you'll be able to see these icons of these iconic landscape sites that you probably maybe have never heard of, like Nianbao Yuzi, or maybe it's Amnimachi, which you could have heard of, or these far remote places that probably also Swinji is working in as well. And then you click on that icon and there's, landscape photography that blows your mind from local photographers. And then when you click on that photo, it brings you into that page, and the page will then, have an introduction to the area, maybe a short blurb, maybe it'll have a GPS coordinate, so it's not a travel website, but it gives you enough information where you can find it by yourself and you have a very basic knowledge of what it is. But then most important, it'll link back to a conservation group that's working in that area. Both on that locations page, but also we'll have a separate page on the website that serves as a database for all the conservation groups working within China. Right now, there is no single platform dedicated to getting all these resources together and listing all these great conservation groups. And I've had so many students and media people reach out to me saying, Kyle, I want to know more. And I can't answer these questions by myself. So now finally we can have a platform through this website to attract them for photos, or they can just go directly to that page and they kind of search through this database of all these incredible local conservation groups. That will then send them to, maybe they have an English website page, maybe they have a WeChat funding page, which is, really transforms how we think about philanthropy in China. Now that you can sign up on WeChat and give 100 RMB a month just out of that. I mean, that brings all sorts of possibilities for people who have WeChat in the United States and elsewhere. So that's the website in a gist. I mean, really a pretty simple feature, but using the map, using these kind of beautiful, sexy landscapes to draw people in, and then linking them back to the good work that's going on out there.
Kyle, we have another question for you. So what were some of the most interesting or memorable places you shot?
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, goodness, like I just dropped one of the names, Nianbao Yuzi, and it's on the border of Qinghai and Sichuan. It also has, it's an incredibly wet area with tons of lakes. It's just the most mind-blowing place. As a photographer, I want to like share my screen now, but like, one, the beauty is majestic, but also the diversity of species. It's one of the most biodiverse places on the Tibetan Plateau that's being protected and conserved by local Tibetans. But it's also under threat. In 2018, they closed it off to tourism because too many hikers were coming and throwing trash, and they weren't educated enough. And maybe there wasn't enough attention and resources flowing into those conservation groups for them to have the resources to do anything about it. But also it's the site of one of the most rare flower species on Earth. I was there in 2017, and there's this, it's called the Jojer poppy. And we were able on an expedition with some of the local Tibetan monks there doing conservation to find the poppy and help map it in this area. And it's just pretty incredible to stand in a mountain valley and be looking at this flower that is just massive and like, it grows to the height of your knee, and you realize that this flower grows nowhere else on Earth but these valleys. But then it's very dystopian to take those photos, put them online, and you have people in China, you have people in the US asking if it's like the Italian Dolomites. And it's just like, no, okay, like, all right, like, let's talk, like, we need to get these places out there so that they don't disappear and that there's more resources to protect them.
That's incredible, Kyle. I can just imagine you shooting the most beautiful landscapes throughout China. And I'd love to have you share a lot of these images with the rest of our audience in due time. So we have a question for Ji. Can you share an example of one way or a type of traditional community sustainable practice that can be shared to urban areas? 就是我们这个他问的问题呢，就是说咱们村庄里面看到的一些比较就是环保的一些方式，哪些呢可以带到这个城市里面去，就是去进行？
就村庄里面，可能它很多的方式，可能更多的基于它本身的一些生产生活或者环境当中。但是我觉得很多可以借鉴到城市的一些就是这样的一个就是生活方式呢，比如说他们对于这个就是他们生活和生产生活的一些就是废弃物的一些处理，其实对于中国农村来讲，以前可能为了增加土地的肥力，他们会把一些厨余或者是一些就关于生活的一些就是非塑料制品和垃圾，他们会在田间做一些简单的这样的一些堆肥处理。但实际上我们现在也在跟村民们学习这样的一些就是理念，就怎么样把就是我们比如说了城市里面其实每天会产生很多的垃圾，现在中国也在推一些垃圾分类这样的方式，但垃圾分类只是一种前端的一种就是行动，关键是分完类的垃圾过后，怎么让它更多的产生一种循环的这样的一个利用。我觉得这方面是我们可以向村民们进行学习的。现在 QR 也在推动这样的一些事情。然后比如说现在中国的农村除了一些就是单独的这样的住户以外，其实很多已经开始有一些集中的居住。集中居住这样的农村其实相当于城市的一些小区，但是在集中的这样的一个农村的小区里面，他们现在我们在开展的一些就是关于资源循环这样的一些就是项目，就是在基于村民们以前传统的这样的一个垃圾处理的基础上，去把这样垃圾分类出来过后， 把有效的就是能够做一些堆肥或循环利用的一些就是这样的垃圾进行生态的堆肥处理，然后生态堆肥处理过后，然后再回到他们的土地当中。然后我觉得这个就是在城市里面其实也可以进行一定的一些借鉴和学习，因为首先小区的生活方式、集中生活方式，因为中国人口多嘛，大部分在集中居住，然后这样的集中居住的小区每年会产生很多这样的垃圾，然后能不能就是像就是农村的社区进行这样的一些废旧的一些就是资源循环利用的这样的一些学习。另外一个就是如果农村的这样的堆肥的一些就是堆出来的这样的一些就是肥料过后可以回到土地当中，但是城市可以，我们倡导他们在那个就是进行一些屋顶和阳台这样的一些绿化或者是甚至再做一些就是小区社区花园这样的一些共建。其实共建这个理念也是中国传统社会当中比较强调的一点，但是在城市因为现在的一些发展或者流动性大家互相之间的共建比较少我们在农村仍然看到这样村民互助共建一个就是社区中心这样的一个形式，所以我们也可以把这样的一些理念，就农村这样一些仍然保存到的传统，能够就是把它复制到那个就是城市去。现在也在这样的一些做尝试，有些地方还比较成功。
She has just shared with us that there are some traditional methods that can be used in the urban setting. So in the villages, what they've discovered was that there are better ways for waste management, not just the traditional recycling, but they're also composting and encouraging ways to engage in a circular economy. So Kira is promoting some of these practices. He also mentioned that a lot of the village residents have kind of formed clusters where they're now several kind of houses are together, and you can have a community center where you are engaging in resource sharing with an attention to ecosystem protection, and they're learning a lot from them, and then they use the compost that's generated from the food waste for agriculture or to plant gardens, and he believes that this can be replicated in the cities. And I just wanted to add that after speaking to Sunji and his associate Guo Hui, I've learned so much about Cura and all the practices that they're promoting in the villages. It's extremely important because not only are they addressing climate change, but they're also preserving a lot of the historical or traditional ways of the villages, which is being lost every day to urbanization. So I would encourage everyone to learn more about Cura's projects as well, which we will share with the audience. So with that, I think this is a great way to end our session today. Thank you again so much, Sunji and Kyle, and congratulations again to Cura and China Outdoors Collective, who are the recipients of our Giving Circle. So on behalf of the China Institute and Serica Next Gen Leader Circle, I want to thank all of tonight's speakers, Charlotte, Peggy, and Rena, as well as to Yvonne and our other NGLC members for helping to bring this event to life. Thank you all to our participants for joining us. We really appreciate your support and look forward to your participation in future NGLC programs. So thank you again and have a great evening and have a great day for those of us who are in China.